Today's episode is brought to you by Stream by AlphaSense, an expert interview transcript library that integrates AI-generated call summaries and NLP search technology so their clients can quickly pinpoint the most critical insights. Start your free trial at www.streamrg.co/PMC. That's STREAMRG.co/PMC. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not an offer or solicitation of an offer to buy or sell securities. SNN Network, SNN Inc., and the Planet MicroCap podcast and the representatives are not licensed brokers, broker-dealers, market makers, investment bankers, investment advisors, analysts, or underwriters. We do not recommend any companies discussed. We may buy and sell securities in any company mentioned and may profit in the event those securities rise in value. We recommend you consult with a professional investment advisor, broker, or legal counsel before purchasing or selling any securities referenced in this podcast. Welcome to the Planet MicroCap podcast. I'm your host, Robert Kraft, and thank you all so much for the support and for tuning in. Do me a quick favor. If you like what you hear at Planet MicroCap, please take 2 seconds and give us 5 stars on Spotify or Apple. This helps with the search engine so that more folks can also discover and engage with all things microcap stocks. Now, before I go any further, I promise you what you're about to hear is not just Paul and I talking about my next event, the Planet MicroCap Showcase, Vancouver, taking place September 6 and 7, 2023. But since you mention it, we are really excited to introduce and welcome you all to my next event on the MicroCap Investor Conference calendar, the Planet MicroCap Showcase Vancouver, taking place September 6 and 7, 2023 at the Fairmont Waterfront. Paul Andreola and his team at Small Cap Discoveries are lead sponsors for this event and will be my personal escort through all of Vancouver. All jokes aside, we wanted to take 20 minutes of your time here today to discuss why we embarked on our first event outside of Las Vegas, why Vancouver, and how we feel this event will fill a void for Canada, which, in my opinion, has one of the best microcap investing ecosystems in the world. We already have some really, and I mean really high quality speakers and companies lined up to participate. And now is your chance to join us as well. To register and attend, please visit planetmicrocapshowcase.com to learn more and be updated on who will be joining us. And like I said, Paul and I aren't just here to promote Vancouver. I also get his thoughts on the first half of 2023 for microcaps, Canadian companies in particular, and what he's seeing for the rest of the year. I've had Paul on the show many times, and he is one of the best microcap investors in the game, period. So I'm honored whenever I get the chance to speak with him, let alone garnering his support for our first venture outside Las Vegas. So thank you again for tuning into the Planet MicroCap podcast, and please enjoy my conversation with Paul Andreola. Paul, thank you for joining me today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Bobby. Good to see you again.
Always good seeing, always good chatting. It's actually kind of been a minute, but the main reason that we're actually chatting today is, we announced that we're going to be doing, we're coming up into your neck of the woods. We're bringing the Planet MicroCap Showcase to Vancouver. And so today I wanted to announce that Small Cap Discoveries is going to be a lead sponsor with you doing a whole keynote and everything. So let's pat each other on the back and kind of talk about, and promote the heck out of what the heck we're doing here.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, Vancouver's a great city. I'm happy to have as many of your viewers and listeners up here to show you guys what the city's all about.
Well, the reason I also wanted to talk about it because it's interesting. Like, we talked about, we always talk chessboard stuff and kind of what's going on out there. And we both felt that there was this clear void in Canada right now where, look, we're in Vegas, for our showcase in Vegas, we feature quite a few Canadian names, or at least Canadian listed names there, and even they have US operations. But, and I appreciate you guys want to come down to Vegas. I know there's quite a few guys, they love coming to Vegas, and I know you always will.
Why not? Yeah.
But at the same time, from my perspective, I was like, I wanted to bring something to you guys, right? And bring the whole dog and pony show up there. So, I mean, talk about this void and why that's, for lack of a better term, been annoying for you, right? I mean, there's so much opportunity out there that just isn't really getting much attention, and having a platform potentially like this for folks to see them.
Yeah, no, listen, I think there's a large number of great little companies up here that don't get properly recognized. And the ability to sort of have a conference like this where we can get a whole bunch of really great little companies mixed in with a lot of great investors, I think it serves the whole sector really well. In Canada, as everybody knows, we're predominantly mining and resources, and it'd just be refreshing to have a conference that can focus on the other side of the ledger and these great little businesses that sort of fall between the cracks. And that's usually where investors get the best opportunities. It's the ones that aren't as well known as the others, right?
100%. I mean, and look, there's some wonderful conferences out there in the resource sector, both in Canada and otherwise, and so we're not saying there's no microcap conferences out there, but they're mostly focused on one specific sector. And there hasn't been more of like a generalist microcap show up there in a long time. Oh, well, I mean, there's some other stuff, but for how we want to do things, like there hasn't been anything.
Yeah, no, I agree. Again, I agree with you in terms of there are a lot of great conferences out there, and the specialization in these other things serves a lot of investors well. But there's just too many companies that fall between the cracks that deserve to be highlighted, and I think we're going to give them that chance to get highlighted, and want to make sure the good little companies that are out there get recognized.
100%. So let's talk about a little bit about the opportunity right now, because I mean, in every podcast I've done in the last, I guess you'd say year, well, maybe 6 to 9 months, the going line is like microcaps have been absolutely killed. Usually Canadian microcaps, it's like even more so.
Yeah, it feels that way.
I mean, with all due respect to our neighbors, so, I mean, maybe tell our audience a little bit about the opportunities that you are seeing in the non-resource kind of generalist microcap space for some of these Canadian listed names that are just going completely unnoticed and yet are actually, real good quality companies.
Oh yeah. So we've as much as it's been sort of generally a hard market out there, there's been a lot of great little companies that have performed really well. Both from fundamental basis and also from a stock price basis, but they tend to be companies that are not really well followed, right? They're not companies that are getting covered by analysts, for example, or showing up on CNBC or on BNN up here in Canada. So I think a platform like this to give these companies a little bit more exposure is really what they need, what the market needs, and would help the environment around here. There's a lot of great little companies that sort of get unnoticed until they get much bigger, and a lot of times they move to NASDAQ or move to the US and then get their exposure there. If you're a true microcap investor, you want to find these as early as you can, and it's opportunities like this that are going to give you that chance to find them early.
So I mean, on that front, I mean, when you're looking at applying your criteria for finding, the tagline for small cap discovery is the best of undiscovered. I mean, without being too forward when I say this, but I mean, do you feel like you're a kid in the candy store right now with all the opportunity that's out there and the levels that some of these companies are trading at?
It's Bobby, it's a buyer's market. I mean, it really it sounds like a broken record. It feels like it's been a buyer market for a good year or two. But it is. Sometimes I feel lonely in some of these stocks because I'm the only buyer, and it's partly because a significant amount of the institutional money has gone way up market, right? So some of those pros aren't coming down market, and when things get a little scary, everybody kind of goes to what they know. So these unknown companies get even more orphaned. So yeah, we're seeing lots of opportunities. We've had a number of the companies we've found in the last 6 months have doubled or tripled in that time frame when everything else seems to have suffered so much, and certainly everything, or I wouldn't say everything, but a lot of microcaps have gone unnoticed. So if you find the right one in this kind of an environment, you tend to do exceedingly well, and we've proven that in the last 12 months.
100%. I mean, are you still also seeing time frames still, like, is the needle being pushed a little bit to those still? I mean, my main question would be, like, even in some of these quality names, I mean, is it still too early for some folks? I mean, I know it all depends on everyone's time horizon, right?
Yeah.
Some people have money that, patient money, the whole bit. But I mean, like, there's still a lot of macro factors at play that maybe some folks are like somewhat weary of. So, I mean, in some of these completely, under the radar names, is it early?
I don't think it's ever really too early for quality names. If you're finding the right businesses, you want to try to be almost too early in a lot of cases. Look, the macro and all these things that are scaring people are the reasons why you almost want to be looking down here, because it's if anything, it's exacerbated the fear in the small names. So you're finding these really outstanding little gems that are just getting ignored. And you get them early enough. Sometimes it doesn't take much for them to get recognized, and all of a sudden you got a triple or a four bagger in your hands before you know it. Even though the overall market is pretty dismal. I mean, the last year the overall markets have been very volatile and very uncertain. We've had a massive hike in interest rates. I mean, we've had a lot of reasons why you should not have owned stocks in general over the last year. And yet there's a number of stocks that we've seen that have gone up 5, 10x in value in that time frame. So you could argue you were too early because of the macro, but boy, oh boy, I'd love to be too early and only get a 10 bagger. Right?
That should be the tagline for this interview. Oh man, I was too early. I only got a 10 bagger.
I only got a 10 bagger. Yeah.
Oh, that's good stuff. By the way, I also want to preface that, going back to the conference itself, for those that are listening to this, yes, there's primarily going to be Canadian listed names at this conference, but the whole idea is that we're also wanting to bring even US, primary listed companies up to Canada to meet Canadian investors as well that are looking at microcaps. Because as Canadian investors, I mean, Paul, I know you only look at Canadian stuff, but there are.
I look around.
Okay. Look at you. You're expanding around.
I'm not that biased. Like I'm not offended. Yeah.
All right. I don't want to speak for you. I get, but so I walk back that a little bit. But there are, Paul included now, folks that are up there looking across the board, just like there's U.S. investors that are looking across the board. And that's what I find super interesting too right now, because there's also some of these U.S. names that some, Canadian microcap investors are like, hey, these are also getting killed too, and there's some value there.
Yeah. No, I think the secret as an investor, you got to be open to new ideas, right? And what I like about a conference like this is the idea that we can bring, either U.S.-centric investors, U.S.-centric companies, and put them in front of a new audience, whether it's a Canadian audience or even Canadian companies in front of U.S. investors. That's the key to this thing. You want to look at new ideas, and I think that's what this type of conference brings to investors. I don't want to see the same stories over and over again. I don't want to just look in my sandbox all the time. I want to get exposed to other stuff.
100%.
I can't wait until you do your conference in Paris or some other exotic location so I can look at some other, European companies or some others. But pick somewhere warm. That's all I'm asking.
How about Costa Rica? There's really good surf there.
There you go.
Yeah,
there you go. I can't surf, but I can sit on a beach.
That's my next.
Drink.
That's the next. Barbados maybe. But what's interesting too, and I'm sure you're seeing this as well. And I was talking to a good friend, an IR guy in the space, and he goes, what's interesting right now in microcaps is like there is so much value right now. There's just some really interesting ideas that are trading at just fractions of what they were at their highs in 2021. And the biggest issue is that some folks are just a little shy in stepping up to the plate. And it's events like this and doing this kind of deep dive due diligence that helps you give you that confidence. Be like, all right, I'll see this guy throwing a 90 mile an hour fastball and see if I can take a whack at it. That's what these events really help in that sense.
Yeah, I agree. Again, it's being exposed to new ideas. I was talking to a broker today, and what he was telling me is that in the environment we're in right now, there's capital coming out of the market, right? There's investors that are having to sell stories, not because they don't like them, not because there's something wrong with the business, but because they have to pay their bills, right? Now, that's the nature of the bear market or nature of sort of a down market like this. But it is also, that describes a buyer's market, right? That describes sort of the better opportunities to buy good deals at cheap prices. You just have to find them. You have to be exposed to them to get those ideas. And again, things like this is what helps investors get exposed to new ideas.
100%. Hey, Paul, another thing I have to ask you, because you've seen multiple cycles. You've seen cycles where, especially on the fund side, where, investors are asking for redemptions and, want to take their money out and all that kind of stuff. We're kind of facing a very similar time where, I talk to a lot of buy side, there's facing redemptions. Mm-hmm. Maybe they, the fund, just the performance is just not there. How do you, when you think back to other times where, microcaps are just in an absolute, upheaval like this, how does it compare? And also, how did you manage through times like that where you're seeing, on the fund side, helping others with manage, I'd like to get your perspective there.
So one of the things we do on a regular basis, we actually talk to a lot of fund managers and a lot of institutional sort of people on the institutional desks to see what is going on. And we recognize when capital is we call it moving up market or down market. And when things get sort of scary and there's redemptions and fund managers are sitting there trying to figure out what they're going to do, they always want to, when things are scary, they tend to try to stay liquid, and they tend to gravitate up to bigger names. So again, they'll sell their smaller names, in some cases sell their illiquid names to sort of a lack of buyers, and you get this egregious mispricing. So we've seen this before. I can reflect back to say 2012, 2013, when it really felt, Bobby, like I was shooting fish in a barrel. We were finding deals left, right, and center that no institutional guys were buying because they were too small. The retail market was still scared because we just came out of the financial crisis, and these deals were, in my mind, being given away. And it turned out that the next 2-3 years were one of the strongest bull markets I've ever seen in my lifetime in the kind of stocks that we talk about. So we had multiple 10, 20xers on these deals because you get the benefit of extreme mispricing, and then growth in these businesses coming out of a slowdown in the business, and you just can't ask for anything more as an investor. So it's important that investors constantly sort of understand where you are in that cycle, and the easiest way to do it is by seeing these businesses and how cheap they are. If something's trading at 6-7 times earnings and growing at 30-40% a year, you don't get those valuations in a bull market. You get them in a bear market. And I can't recall the last time I bought a stock that was trading at single digits, growing at single digit PE and growing at double digit revenues, and not made money on the deal. And that's the environment we're in right now.
Very cool. All right, I think we've promoted enough, and as well gave kind of a reason why folks should come up here and hang out with us. So, just to kind of give the plug, everybody go, if you want to register for the conference, it's free for investors. It's www.planetmicrocapshowcase.com. If you'd like to present at the conference, shoot me an email, rcraft, RKRAFT at snnwired.com. Also, if you have any inquiries about sponsoring, you use the same email as well. And I mean, Paul, any final thoughts on this, Mr. Lead sponsor of our event, keynote speaker, the whole bit?
Well, I think if the beauty of Vancouver isn't enough to come up here, we've given you a second reason to come up to find some great investment ideas. So I'd love to meet as many new people as I can. So if you come on up, I'd love to shake your hand and tell you more about the city, more about the conference, and certainly more about Canadian companies that we're talking to. So I welcome everybody that be interested in coming on over.
Very cool. All right, Paul. Thank you again. We're excited, and we'll see you soon.
You betcha. Take care, Bobby.
Podcast is for informational purposes only and is not an offer or solicitation of an offer to buy or sell securities. SNN Network, SNN Inc., and the Planet MicroCap Podcast and the representatives are not licensed brokers, broker-dealers, market makers, investment bankers, investment advisors, analysts, or underwriters. We do not recommend any companies discussed. We may buy and sell securities in any company mentioned and may profit in the event those securities rise in value. We recommend you consult with a professional investment advisor, broker, or legal counsel before purchasing or selling any securities referenced in this podcast.